Winter Wonderland. Do 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 do. Come. 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 Me before and realized it didn't work, you know? So like he's typically pretty good with me, but here's the thing, right? Knowing that everything comes down to knowing the dog, right? I know that he's a very reactive dog, right? That's not news to anybody, right? So knowing that he's a reactive dog and knowing that he's very reactive and knowing that typically when he starts reacting, it takes a lot to get him to stop. I'm just gonna be prepared the first time that he does it with you to need to sit there and like nail his ass like 7 or 8 times until he stops, right? And then the next time it happens, once he's like, oh wow, like this didn't work, right? Because here's what typically happens, right? We have the dog on a leash, we walk him past the kennel, they start reacting, we say no, tap, we say no, we tap, we're like, oh shit, it's not working, we just pull them away, right? What does that do? Amplify the behavior, makes it harder next time, makes it harder next time, makes it harder next time, and confirms in his mind he could fight through those corrections and it doesn't work, right?
Which is scenario he was off leash.
Oh, regardless. Yeah.
Generally, we see it upstairs.
Generally speaking, when he starts doing it, he's going to be on a leash. I know maybe a year ago or so, right before you came back, when I was out of town in Cincinnati, he was really reactive to like a dog in that white kennel right there. And that situation happened like every single day with him, like 3 times. You know what I mean? Which just...
And I missed the beginning of it. You gave the answer and then you gave the problem. What was the solution?
Well, the solution for me, right, like when I've worked with this dog before, when he first started boarding here, was I didn't avoid those situations. I let him right into it, right? Like, you know, here you go, right? You're off leash. I'm not going to pull you away from it. I'm going to figure out a way to punish and stop this behavior when he starts doing it, right? And typically speaking, that's just following through and just making sure you're really getting on him over it, right?
And at a higher level, basically.
Well, I just started 100 with it. Like this dog works at 100 for everything, you know, like he's just baseline that dog, right? But, you know, if you fight that fight and it's like the first time he does it, it takes, let's just hypothetically say 8 corrections to get him to stop doing it. Next time he tries to do it, maybe it'll take 6 corrections to get him to stop doing it. Next time he does it, maybe it'll take 3 corrections to get him to stop doing it. Next time, maybe he doesn't do it at all, right? And then you've achieved that kind of respect out of him of, we're gonna be more persistent with you, we're gonna correct this behavior and ultimately get you to stop, and we are gonna win each one of those little battles, and there's never gonna be a time you get away with doing it and just get dragged away from the situation where, you know, it's just we lost the fight and we amplified your behavior to make it harder next time, you know? So, you know, even stuff like, and then the other side of it is just, again, general respect through obedience, right? So like when I work with him or do anything with him, Oscar, come. Right? Like I'm really strict about my commands with this dog, and he's very compliant because of it. And that's why I'm pretty comfortable in all of these situations, like having him like off-leash reliable with me, you know? And again, even this stuff, e-collar's at 100, right? Like if you just try to sniff one of these crates and leave my side, like you're gonna get a big correction for that. So I'm preemptively setting the tone, you know? So that when he's off leash, it's also gonna be easier to get him back under control.
So can we translate that to our kennel text running?
No, come. You could, right?
Because I think they understand that.
Hypothetically, yes, right? That standard should be maintained. I'm not telling everybody to do it off leash, obviously, right? But the general running and stuff, yeah, this dog needs to start respecting everybody a little bit more, you know? Look at you two.
The advice you can give them. Just make sure we're catching everything.
Yeah, I mean, basically, yes, like with all your runs and stuff. And then I would start with like, you know, just so you guys can get comfortable with things, I would start with your enrichment just being, just let these two just rip down here. Let them have fun, let them do their thing, and just make sure like there's never a situation he gets away with being an asshole down here like that, you know? And you could start with just, like I said, like he'll run around and burn off energy by himself. Like he's pretty good at occupying himself, you know?
When you want to push,
yeah,
training the come command because you have a highly motivated, smart dog. Everything clicks so far, and you have a highly motivated.
Do you mean just work on the come command before other commands? Is that just what you mean?
No, just in general. Because typically, what I'll stretch it out to, I can if I'm taking my time. I'll start off with no like e-collar whatsoever.
Yeah.
I'll start off with just leash pressure, and then I'll move on to the next session. I'll run them through a little bit of constant stim, and then move them up to, still on the 6-foot leash, move them up to single tap corrections. And then the third class, I'll stretch it out into, you know, the long line with the single tap corrections, and hopefully get to the follow. Typically, I do 9 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
That's like typically how it goes. But like, do you ever train it like quicker?
Well,
Do those steps quicker?
the speed is contingent on the dog, right? So yeah, if the dog is really good and they progress through step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 very rapidly, yeah, realistically you can get it done as quick as the dog gets it done, you know? Like all those steps, it's not a matter of, like we wouldn't skip steps necessarily, but you could move through the steps much faster if the dog's proficient enough,
Yeah,
you know?
I see the dog proficient, just hurry up and just go ahead and move it.
Yeah, I mean, once they're, you know, that, again, the general guide that we have that outlines all the steps, there's no amount of time you have to spend on each step, right? There's dogs I take out, let's take the sit command, for example, and I want to teach a really good sit stay. Most of these dogs, step 1 through 3, you could almost skip it because the dog is already good with the sit, you know what I mean? Like typically the first 3 steps is just to teach the initial command. So as soon as the dog understands it, or if the dog already understands it, I'm still gonna go through those steps to make sure they look good. But, you know, a lot of times I can move through all those steps in fucking 5 minutes if I wanted to, you know?
Okay. Come.
Keep in mind duration with any of our positions. Once you have the position like bomb-proof, the duration is so freaking easy. It's like with a bed stay, for example. Like a lot of people, like as soon as they get the slightest sliver of the dog understanding the command, they want to jump into having the dog hold it because that's like them proving the dog really understands it. But if you just spend a ton of time making sure the command itself is like perfect, the duration is, it's literally a cakewalk.
Yeah.
You know, so the come command is the same way. Instead of rushing into the follow, get the command itself like freaking perfect.
Come. Good. Okay. Come. Good.
Cool. All right, so here's the thing. Forget all that for a minute. All in all, I think she looks pretty good. I think that you need to be testing some of this stuff a little bit more and making it a little bit more challenging for her though, right? So initially the come command was just a little bit sloppy by itself, right? So make sure that looks really great before you do the follow. And then once the follow looks good, you got to really test it amongst different types of distractions and stuff, you know? But I think she looks fine. You know, I would be testing your commands more off leash though, a little bit at this point.
Okay.
Piecing things together a little bit. So, but I think it looks good.
Their owner was just asking about the whole resource guarding thing again.
This dog?
Bowie.
Bowie.
I guess like her thing is she picks up something she shouldn't have and runs to her crate, kind of growls and nips and stuff.
Yeah.
If you try to close the door, if you try to grab, basically.
The root. Go ahead. Sorry.
Is it something that's just like like, you know, because he has like younger kids and so there's toys and stuff that are kind of around the house sometimes or whatever. She picks that up, she runs to the crate. Is it something where just cut off the crate, you know, just close the door?
You can do that as one thing, but that's not also gonna, that's looking at the issue as like when he's in the crate or she's in the crate that she starts doing this, right? The issue is that this dog feels like anything on the ground is its.
Right.
You know? So first thing I would do is like, you know, from day one, as soon as they bring the dog back into the house, have the e-collar cranked up and first and foremost set the boundary of you're not allowed to pick anything up off of the ground right now, right? And that's setting the tone of these things are just not yours to begin with, right? So that you're essentially sidestepping the issue of like, well, once she has it, I can't get it back because we're teaching her you're not allowed to have this stuff in the first place.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And so I've talked to him about that, you know, correcting on high, making her drop it. If it's something though, like that, he doesn't see her going for it. He doesn't see her.
I gotcha.
And she grabs it,
Sure.
goes into the crate, and then he's like, then he finds her in the crate.
Same concept. If she still has it, that's still, you would need to correct for it, right? And I would make her disengage from the object then at that point. Say she's in the crate right there and she's got something. First off, if the thing is in her mouth, I'm going to correct her until she lets go of it. Then I'm going to call her out of it and then go take it.
Okay. Is it something that I would like recall her out, put her in a down or something while I go and get it?
How?
Or no?
No, just disengage, grab the thing, then you're good, right? But you're essentially teaching the dog when you have something, right, you need to disengage from that object, right? Whether disengaging from that object is like actually getting out of the crate, whether disengaging from the object is depending on how big the crate is, if she's at the front of it, moving to the back of it away from the object, you know? She just has to disengage from that thing.
Okay, cool. So not necessarily close off the thing, but more just kind of work through it, just let that kind of, those situations kind of happen and work through it.
Yeah, I mean, any of that kind of stuff, like if your dog has things that aren't theirs, right, or whatever, whether they're forget guarding it, right? Guarding is really just a byproduct of us not being able to get our dog to disengage from an object, right? So the issue is not, forget guarding, the issue is just you need to get this dog to be able to disengage from it using whatever type of,
pick it up at all.
Correct, using whatever kind of motivation you need to, right?
Yeah.
So that's really the solution for it in a nutshell. So, cool. Yeah, Rue looks really good. I would be testing this fall. And here's the thing, don't worry so much about, like, we were getting kind of fancy there at the end. And it is a good thing, like, say we have more time, right? It is good to take a picture like that and be like, I'm gonna train to this picture, you know? Incrementally in whatever steps we need. I had you step back and remove the down, obviously, so we could focus on just the pauses, obviously. But, you know, I would just still isolate those commands, you know, follow just through the facility, stopping at doorways, stuff like that. That's gonna be a really good place to start with all this.
Okay.
So.
Cool.
Start with that. She's crushing it. She did really good yesterday.
Enid, bed. Good. Okay. Enid, bed. Good. Okay. Enid, bed. Good. Okay. Here. Let's go. Sit. Good. Okay. Enid, sit. Good. Okay. Enid, sit. Good. Okay.
And has she always kind of been like this with strangers?
No.
Okay.
Well, she had some reactivity and she was very like off-putting, but she didn't do this.
I got you.
So it's definitely escalated for the year that I've had her. And then I have another dog and my partner. I think
Yes.
with that
Okay.
missing
Yeah.
piece,
I
she's
recall.
definitely her confidence.
Yeah. And was there something in particular that like you noticed that was like kind of the turning point with her?
So the turning point with me was the 2 weeks I had my friend take care of her.
Yeah.
My friend came back a few weeks later.
Yeah.
And she, you know, postured, you know, did the whole. She never for a very long time, she kept her space. She would
gotcha.
bark and like, she never got the fur up on the back of it, but she would bark and.
I got you.
And now she's getting close. So I had a friend
Sure.
come over recently, and she lunged at her, and I just happened to like notice, so I was able to pull her back.
Sure.
But I think she would have bitten her.
Then just hang out there for a minute. I know, I'm so scary.
I know, baby girl.
Muzzle is fitted up nice and snug right
Yeah,
now.
I was pulling on it. It'll pull away a little bit, but it's.
That's okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, you can walk her a little closer to me. Yeah, just hang out right about there. And in a second here, what I'm gonna have you do is you're gonna hold your leash short, but you're gonna take the slack and you're gonna give me the slack of it.
Okay.
So. Thank you.
Do you want me to let go?
Go for it. I'm gonna go sit down over here if that's okay. So first step here, I just want to see how long she'll persist for sitting with me, you know. If she continues to persist and doesn't seem to slow down a little bit, I'll kind of push the boundary a little bit, try some interaction and stuff. So obviously she tried to bite me, right? Like we're not gonna discredit that by any means here.
No.
But a lot of times what we'll find with dogs like this, she's clearly doing this out of a place of fear, right? She's trying to get away from me right now. There's tension on the leash, right? But typically speaking, when we see dogs that are really scared and just have for a while now been doing that reacting behavior from a held back leash, the second that restraint goes away, it's just like they unload. You know what I mean? Now, I try to, on that first kind of time that they do it, I kind of discredit that initially due to all of that frustration buildup just getting like exploded, you know? From there, I see, you know, how much does the dog persist? How often do they like revert back to that state of mind once I have the leash, et cetera, right? I'm just gonna kind of keep her close to me here right now, so I'm actually not gonna allow her to get away, right? And I'm kind of making her make contact right now. So I'm kind of holding this leash in place where she's forcing her, or I'm forcing her, I should say, to make physical contact with my body so that she's not realizing she can get away right now. So pretty much all that nonsense that she was throwing at me was her trying to avoid this, right? And listen, I'm not saying she's not gonna try to do it again in a second, right? But once I make the contact, she's like, wait, this is different. Like all those behaviors I'm used to doing that work are no longer working, you know?
Yeah, that's part of the problem. I was trying not to reinforce.
Sure.
The pull back,
Yeah.
and it's hard because it's scary for people.
Of course, and especially since, you know, you don't have that much training on her, obviously.
Yeah.
So there's only so much you can do in a situation like that, you know what I mean? But the positive with all of this is that she's proven that she can be social, right? She's fine with you, right? She was fine with your partner, right? She was fine with your friend, et cetera, et cetera. So we know she could turn this behavior on and off, right? And it really is just a bunch of intimidation tactics, right?
Yeah.
Like again, yes, some of these cases she's trying to bite me, but that's because I'm pushing this boundary more than any other guest would, right? Even with my personal dogs who are pretty good with people, I wouldn't let guests push boundaries as much as I'm doing right now.
Absolutely.
But we're doing this to really test where she's at with stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So in a second here, if she stays a little bit chill right now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get up, I'm gonna start walking around, and a lot of times the next big trigger that we'll see once they're comfortable with just hanging out with you is when that picture starts changing again. So I'll probably get up and she'll freak out, you know, walk around for a minute. We'll do that a couple times until we can desensitize that trigger a little bit as well.
Soon we'll need tune-up training when he comes home.
Okay. So again, exactly what I said. Getting up, big trigger, no biggie, right? anytime we're working with like, especially more serious behavioral issues, but behavioral issues in general, there's always a like self-reinforcement behind a behavior, right? Whether it's plain old jumping, whether it's barking out the window, whether it's aggression, right? Typically speaking, there's some reinforcement to the dog does this, and something happens when they do that, which creates a sense of positive reinforcement, which amplifies the behavior, right? So in her case, she reacts, person goes away. She reacts, person goes away. That feels really, really good.
Yeah.
Her knowing that she has a sense of control at that point, right? So before we start any sort of training, we have to see first and foremost, when we remove the reinforcement, what happens, right? Now that's not a solution in and of itself, obviously, right? But it's the first start to understanding the behavior. It's crazy, I know. She's got a fight in her. I'm gonna try that just a couple more times here, just see if we get any sort of reduction in the getting thing at this point. Why you gotta be like this? Why you gotta be like this? It's definitely a handful.
Okay.
Right? So here's the thing. So definitely, we won't call it good, right?
Okay.
So now again, I've seen plenty of dogs like her before. It's not like this is the worst thing that I've ever seen in my life, right? But like, you start dealing with behaviors like this, and you start having to have the conversations, not necessarily about like, do we euthanize, do we not euthanize, but like, what would it look like if we were to pursue a training option? You know what I mean? And the big thing I tell everybody is, when we're dealing with dogs that are having like extreme fear aggression issues, right? Or extreme aggression issues in general. Hers is more specific to fear though, obviously. You don't ever quote unquote like fix them and turn them into social butterflies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the dog we were talking about, like Kevin, for example, right? He was an extreme fear aggressive dog, right? He was definitely a bite risk, right? He was definitely very intense with his behaviors and stuff. And he made substantial progress, like really, really phenomenal progress, right? He was really great with all of us at the facility. He went home maybe, it was right when I got back from Hawaii. It was beginning of January, I think. I think he went home, right? And what's that?
Getting ready to go to Hawaii.
Yeah. Oh, cool. You know, he went home beginning of January, and like I actually just an hour or so ago was working with the trainer that worked with him. I was like, hey, have you heard from Kevin lately? He's like, yeah, he just called me the other day, said like things are going pretty well. You know, a couple little hiccups here and there, like nothing really aggression related, just, you know, questions about the training process and stuff like that. But he's been pretty good, you know. But the big thing is there are very, very strict rules they have to follow as far as like, this is how you introduce him to other dogs. This is how you introduce him to other people, et cetera, right? When you have a guest come over the house, this is your routine you need to follow indefinitely, et cetera, right? So I'm very confident we can get her to a place where you can manage her extremely effectively, right? You know, people come in, she'll have a reliable bed stay on her. She won't be, you know, need to be like locked up in her crate, or else she's going to be like charging at people trying to attack them and stuff like that, et cetera, right? But she's probably going to be a dog that the first couple times a new person comes over the house, the socialization with that person is going to be done through her holding the bed stay and just seeing that person moving around from afar. Because let's say, you know, her big trigger right now with me is not like, once I get her cool with me, she's cool with me, right? But when I start moving around or changing what I'm doing and stuff, she's like, wait a minute, what are you doing? I'm scared about this. I need to try to control this, right? So her initial socialization needs to be learning how to see those types of things and just do her own thing and realize that it's nothing that concerns her.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And once you work past that trigger, the socialization part of things, like what we're doing right now, is really not that challenging. She's proven she could be social with people. She's just very controlling of the things going on in her house, right? And we need to shift that mentality to it's your house, and to you don't need to worry about these things that are happening. You know what I mean? But I'm not going to tell you that she's never going to be a bite risk ever either, because that would be unrealistic. You know what I mean?
Agree.
We could, you know, like I said, we could substantially improve her responses to these triggers, right? And we could make it so it's such a minimal risk, you know? But that risk is always going to be there to some extent, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, you know, here's the thing. She's a little bit older, right? You know, like looks like she's in good health and stuff, obviously. So I'm sure she's got plenty of life left in her, and she'll probably be the dog that lives to 100.
That was my other, I was like, this
Yeah.
dog will live until she's 20.
Yeah, right? But, where was I getting at with that? But she's a little older. You know, she doesn't, you know, it's okay if her social interaction with new people is typically done through more passive socialization like that. Like, that's okay.
Totally okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't need her to anything.
Exactly, right? So that's the biggest conversation I have with people with dogs like this is just, you know, are those things you're okay with? Because we have plenty of people that'll bring a dog like this to us and just be like, well, we have parties at our house all the time and we want her to be out for it. And, you know, we...
Very selfish.
I completely agree with you, but it's like, you know, it's who am I to say what you want out of your dog?
I get it.
But unfortunately, this would not be the dog that would fit in that lifestyle. You know what I mean? And this, unfortunately, is also not a dog you could rehome. So, like, people that are in that type of situation, that's where you get into, like, the euthanasia conversation about things, because it's just too much of a liability then at that point.
Yeah, I'm not,
right?
I don't have massive parties by any means.
Yeah.
I'm totally cool with a play stay if people are over.
Yeah. So, you know, like I said, like I think she's you know, like I haven't met a dog like this that isn't workable, that can't make substantial progress, you know. I like to just go over again, like, you're not going to fix her, right? You're just going to get her, like, dramatically more manageable with stuff.
Yeah.
So. That we're movie stars here. 2 for 3. Don't mind her. She doesn't know what she's doing. I do need to buy some Diet Coke for the house too.
He's skittish of strangers.
Sure.
But he does warm up, and then he's fine with people for the most part. Adults.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Kids.
Another story.
Well, actually, it's mainly the kids that live here.
Sure.
He's possessive of the two of us.
Yeah.
And the main problem is if we're sitting down.
It's in this area.
Like when we're walking around, just doing regular, normal stuff, he's pretty much fine with it for the most part.
I gotcha.
Except for the youngest one. Really have to watch him with the youngest one.
So is this pretty common as far as like people coming over and kind of like he'll stay on the bed, but the barking and the grumbling and stuff like that?
Yeah, but I think honestly he's doing it because you're just standing there.
Okay.
He would have normally calmed down by now.
I gotcha.
And also a lot of people that come over, it's not like he's never seen them before either. And he doesn't like hats.
Okay.
But my main concern, is it okay if I let him out?
Leave him there for a little bit longer.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll get into some stuff here in a minute. We'll release him and everything, but
I didn't know
we'll let him just kind of chill there for a minute.
Yeah, do you want to sit?
No, like I said, we'll let him hang out there for a minute. So now with the kids, he won't do the behavior if he's on the bed currently.
Correct.
It's only if he's like free?
Yes.
No, he'll jump out of place.
He'll jump out of place to do it?
For the kids?
Yeah, to go after the kids. He will. If they walk past him and he's in place, he'll go after them.
Okay. And how predictable is the behavior from the standpoint of, like, it sounds like he does it regularly, obviously, but like, does he do it like every single time they walk by him?
It depends on the situation.
Okay.
If things are quiet and relaxed,
Sure.
and nobody's like staring at him or holding onto a leash or whatever,
Yeah.
then, and they just happen to like, even if they're like Ryan, the youngest one,
Sure.
if he's standing at the steps, like here,
Sure, yep,
talking, he'll start charging at him. The biggest problem is with the youngest one, and I think it's also because he's so terrified of him.
Sure.
At this
I mean, you could
point.
definitely tell he's a skittish dog, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So.
Yeah, he is, for sure.
Yeah.
So he's pretty good with the oldest boy, for the most part, but still he can't even like approach the couch if we're sitting on the couch and he's in a relax, if he's relaxed, without him going after them.
I gotcha.
He's never bit one.
So he
of them.
scratches them though?
He'll basically chase them down, growling and snarling. He'll get them pinned. Like one time he got Ryan pinned against the fireplace. One time, and then he got the girl. He got her pinned in the corner.
Yep.
And he'll jump on top of them and like scratch at them and sound like he's biting.
Okay, I gotcha. All right, so couple things right off the rip that I know I've noticed that are related but unrelated to that. So your communication with him, though it's not horrible because he's obviously listening, right? He's staying on the bed. There's a lot of kind of mixed, confusing signals that you were giving, like when he was coming in. So some of the like, you know, the way you were correcting him when he got off of the bed, there wasn't a whole lot of clarity to how it was happening. When he was on the bed, like we were kind of letting the grumbling and the barking go for a little bit, then we were correcting for it sometimes, et cetera, right? So just some inconsistencies with stuff that I like to tighten up. And a lot of times when I'm working with like dogs that are massively fearful of stuff, I actually like simplify my criteria to like, what's the most easy thing I could ask them to do right now, right? And what I do is I hold them to like the highest standard with that thing, right? So I know that when he's scared, he's probably not gonna stop with the little huffy puffy stuff initially, right?
Yeah.
But I can probably get him to maintain his place really easily, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make my criteria just place, right? And if he breaks place or if he doesn't get on place, I'm gonna be very firm about the correction for that, right? And, you know, I'll typically let him work through some of his insecurities and the barking and the grumbling and the growling and stuff, because a lot of times, especially those like really light, like huffy puffy noises and stuff that dogs will make, they're almost borderline like subconscious sometimes. Like they're just so in their head and so scared that it's just like kind of coming out. So the more we try to correct for it, sometimes we could actually create a lot more stress associated with that scenario, you know? And when the behavior does ultimately stop, like it's stopped at this point, obviously, it typically has little to do with the fact that it was corrected for, and it just has to do with there's been enough time at that point where he started to settle down, right? So just kind of, you know, the communication in general outside of with the kids, I want to just tighten up a little bit and just focus on some kind of ways to fix those types of things.
So
This looks very genetic to me. You know, I think we might have talked about it a little bit over the phone, but like when you got dogs that have this strong of like fear drives and stuff, like it's almost never a result of something happening to them. A lot of times it's kind of just wired into them to some extent, you know. Free doesn't mean that they can't learn to control it, but like a lot of times, like when they're this scared, like they're gonna be pretty scared of stuff. Place, certain things can amplify it, you know. But go ahead. Free. One more.
now he will sit and watch, but if he gets the opportunity. So if I was doing this and you weren't standing there holding his leash, he would typically stay in place.
Yeah.
But he would do this, you know,
Yeah.
not taking his eyes off, panting. And then if I walk up to him, then he'll try to get her.
Yeah. Now that barking and stuff, though, it's startling. That's just the stimulation coming out. Like, he's not obviously doing anything at that point, which is why I'm not correcting. My only expectation right now is that all 4 paws stay on this bed. Again, like we talked about with some of the noise and stuff, if you get too naggy and nitpicky about those types of things, you can create more stress and make the process harder, right? He's just saying right now, like, this is very hard for him to keep it under control, you know? But he's doing a pretty good job with it, honestly.
Let me see what happens if I lower her. Do you want me to let her go?
Where will she go? Just downstairs?
Downstairs.
Sure. No. Place. Got extremely high prey drive, you can tell. I mean, it's interesting to see when these dogs go from like the really timid, scared to like that really confident, prey-driven mentality.
Yeah.
It's a lot of times why they get themselves into trouble, because when they're really scared, they can't control themselves. And when they're really amped up, they also can't control themselves. So you kind of have to address it on both sides of the spectrum, you know? Which is why, honestly, the cat thing, the fact that you can't get him to, you know, stay calm around the cat, you know, is probably the first place I would address it, you know, even before the children, which is why we're doing this, obviously, because this is almost even a more intense state of mind than the fear-driven state of mind, you know.
Okay. What a good kitty. Yeah, right. Look at the kitty cat.
You can let her go. And again, the excitement, but he's not making the motion of getting off of it, which is why I'm not correcting for it, as long as he keeps it under control enough where he stays on there. Now, you said just the hanging out was the trigger, or is there something? Yeah, okay.
Generally, if we're sitting on the couch and the kids are approaching the couch,
Yeah.
or anywhere in the vicinity of the area of the rug,
Yeah,
he's on high alert,
I gotcha.
and he'll chase after him.
Yeah. We can definitely tell, you know, he hasn't settled down at all being on it, right? And this is the first thing, is a lot of times what I'll find is that people start off doing the right thing when they start trying to work through these things. Like, you've incorporated your place command into things, right? You've incorporated some general obedience into stuff, right? But then what happens is they rush too quickly into the next step of things, which would be the free, you know, having the interaction taking place, stuff like that, before they've worked through the immediate trigger. It's interesting, we were just at another in-home assessment right before this with a dog with similar issues, but a lot more aggression behind it than this dog, obviously. It was the same concept where the dog is fine. It kind of the opposite, actually, with you guys. The dog was fine if you're just like hanging out on the couch, stuff like that. But the second you get up and start moving around, like, that was kind of the trigger with things, you know? And, you know, the first step in working through these types of issues is we need to have a really good place command or a really good bed command. And we need to get them to a place where when that trigger is happening, so in the other dog's case, the moving around, in your guys' case, the just hanging out on the TV doing something kind of thing, that you see the dog actually settle into the position, as opposed to like, oh, okay, he's holding place, right? He's doing a good job with that, but his state of mind still isn't there. You know what I mean? He's still very concerned.
He
So
has to be relaxed and not paying attention.
Yeah, and for some dogs, that's like, you know, a long process where like you may for the next 3 weeks, anytime the kids are here, right, have him be on the place, fully committed to that position until you've checked that box like he hasn't done anything at all at this point. You know what I mean? And, you know, he's laying down now, which is another positive. He's not making as much of like hard eye contact and stuff. And you see that process going along. But let's say right now he lays down and winds up taking a nap. we need to build on that success. Just because we did it one time doesn't mean that we're totally there yet either, right? So you need to essentially make these kind of stepping stones of like, okay, first step here, that trigger of you guys hanging out in this area, just having fun doing your thing. We need to have a very long, prolonged period of success of him not reacting while that's going on and being comfortable with that picture, right?
Okay.
Once we've checked that box, we move on to the next step, right? Which may be more commotion going on or them kind of running around this area or whatever, you know? Once you've checked that box, then you move on to the next step, which might be him free, you know? Then you'd move on to the next step, which would be more of just general existing and day-to-day interactions and stuff. You know, same deal with the cat, right? I would recommend that the same concept applies with the cat and just hang out with the cat up here. You know what I mean? Put him on the bed. And I wouldn't get super wild with the like, I need to like bring the cat all the way up to him kind of thing or anything like that. He just needs to get used to seeing the cat hanging out and practicing impulse control of not going up. And like you said, he will kind of do that for you already unless you really push that boundary. But we need to have prolonged success with that before we move on to the next step. You know what I mean? And then the other side of the equation is just having really, really clear precision to where we give our corrections and how motivating we're being. Like I said, like all the barking and this and that, I wasn't correcting for any of that kind of stuff because he's gonna let out energy while this is going on. He's gonna let us know this is hard for him. But as long as he doesn't make the mistake of actually getting off of the bed, we gotta let him work through those emotions. Same deal with us coming in, right? As long as he holds the bed, I don't care at all what kind of noise he's making while he's on the bed, right? As long as he holds the bed. But the second he makes the decision to not do that anymore and actually steps off, or in the case of us coming in, actually gets off and tries to run away, that's where we would give the correction. The correction will be much more motivating, right? So for example, the first correction I needed to give with the cat, like when you brought him up and he actually stepped off the first time you came up this way, that was at a 75 that I gave a correction at there, right? So it was much more motivating. And for this, I just have the e-collar set at 100 because I want to really set that tone of this is a mistake you cannot make, right? So there's more motivation for him to actually hold that position, which will get the point across more clearly and get his attention off of what's going on over there, you know?
Okay.
So that's a lot of what's happening right now, you know? Good job, buddy. I'm not seeing, you know, again, like the situation is not good, like we talked about over the phone. Like I don't like that he's chasing the kids and scratching them and this and that, right? But he's showing that he can control himself, you know? He's showing that he's very prey-driven and it's gonna take a pretty motivating correction to get him to control himself, but he's showing that he can do it nonetheless, you know? I think that you're not giving him enough time to just be successful with that.
Okay.
Right? If he doesn't have an opportunity to be successful, where it's like, wow, like I did this a bunch of times and didn't get any corrections for it, he's always still going to be in a slightly stressed out state of mind, you know? Which is why the naggy corrections and this and that, like, you know, it kind of keeps him in this cycle of like, I don't really know what to do right now. I don't really know how to be successful with this right now.
Okay.
So this is the place to start right now, is you got to get him really good with this. And again, this is positive, right? He's holding this nicely. He's no longer paying attention to what they're doing at this point. So we got to let him be successful with it. Maybe you do this for another 20 minutes or so and then give him a break, put him away for a little bit, you know, and then do it again later, right? And then working with the cat tomorrow. And then, you know, continue doing that until you start seeing you put him on and he just kind of does this. He gets himself on, just settles into it. He's like, I'm going to be here for a while, you know? So.
All right. So
that's a starting place.
You guys are here. We are gonna use you guys, and on the nights that you're not here, I'm gonna use Lowly.
There you go. And you know, here's the thing, like, make it organic, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure you guys would love to hang out here and watch TV and be a family together and do stuff like that. So use that as your opportunity to work on this, you know? Make him adapt to your lifestyle as opposed to the other way around. So, because I see too many people fall into the trap of they change their life for their dog, you know? We don't want to do that, right? So this is us forcing him like, hey, this is what we're going to do right now, and you don't need to be a part of it right now. You need to just chill over there.
Right.